This is the CHGO Cubs Podcast. My name is Corey. I am joined, as always, by Brendan, and we are coming to you live here on Sunday, September 10th. The Cubs get the victory in the finale of the four-game set with the Arizona Diamondbacks here on Sunday to earn a 4-3 homestand after sweeping the Giants earlier this week. Rough Friday through Saturday, Thursday through Saturday here against Arizona, Brendan, but 4-3 against a couple of wild card hopefuls. All things considered before you head out west, not a bad homestand, if not a frustrating few days sandwiched in the middle there.
At least they rebounded, right? The tone of this podcast would be substantially different had they got swept, but we'll get into a lot of it. There's only, 18 games left? Like, at this point, it's almost a coin flip, more or less. So, in my mind, I'm trying to draw back on that at this point, a lot of randomness can happen, and not to get so hung up on maybe some of the small details we might otherwise get hung up on, like back in April and May.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and a very interesting week, right? I'm curious if you are joining us live here on YouTube. I know the Bears just kicked off, so if you're rocking with us live, we appreciate it. I know some of you probably will be joining later, watching on demand or listening on your podcast feed after the Bears game. And if you are here live in the YouTube chat, let us know how you're feeling about things, right? Because a really great series from this team to sort of put down the San Francisco Giants, earn that sweep earlier in the week. Justin Steele, we'll talk about him. 2 incredible starts this week. Obviously, Kyle Hendricks, a really great start here on Sunday. Jameson Taillon with a really nice start against the Diamondbacks.
Look at that, Taillon.
Even though, the Cubs couldn't get the run support for him. So plenty to talk about, but just like you said, Brendan, they salvaged the game on Sunday, but I think there was a lot of frustration for those few days, the offense disappearing.
Well, I sensed it from you. You were not happy.
I was not. Yeah. I mean,
you were probably a little annoyed with my text too. I could kind of tell.
I'm always annoyed with your text. There's definitely some to talk about the lineup. David Ross doing some shuffling on Sunday. Christopher Morel back in the leadoff spot. Seiya Suzuki moving up to the 3-hole. Ian Happ moving down as, the Diamondbacks did an opener type thing, but he still moved down, took that first at bat at least from the right-handed side. So interesting from David, but he's been adamant that the lineup is going to be mostly the same because those are the guys that got them here. That's what he says, right? We can debate whether that's a good idea or, whatever. The other thing, we will keep an eye on it, but we did get word from our guy, Jared Willis, who was covering the game for ALLCITY.com at Wrigley Field today, that Jeimer Candelario left with back tightness. So I know we were all kind of wondering why Tauchman came in, Candy came out in the 5th inning of that game, but he is experiencing back tightness.
So am I. My neck hurts too.
Right.
He and I both.
So we'll see how that plays out with the Cubs heading out west. Hopefully he doesn't miss any time or at least too much time. So we will see. But Brendan, again, plenty to talk about here. I want to talk about Cody Bellinger getting his 25th home run. He joined some pretty exclusive company this afternoon at Wrigley Field. Dansby Swanson, another 20-homer season for him. So some milestones there. And then, of course, at some point, we'll look at Justin Steele and, talk about where he sits in this Cy Young race. I think I was with Cody at Murphy's Bleachers yesterday. At least yesterday, odds-wise, he was still not the favorite. But in terms of the case, he certainly looks like the favorite or very close to it if I were voting. Now, of course,
you're not biased. Yeah, completely unbiased figure over there.
Right.
Yeah.
So plenty to talk about. Again, want to talk to you about what Jameson Taillon did well in this Diamondback series and how maybe we can kind of continue that. Of course, some more bullpen discussions with how those things went this weekend, the offense, et cetera, et cetera. But I think, the place to start for me, Brendan, 4-3. Again, the Diamondback series frustrating at times, but when you bring in 2 teams, we knew that this stretch was going to feature a lot of teams the Cubs are competing with for these playoff spots. I thought, this is a week that you will certainly take. I think frustrated by some of those Diamondbacks games, but listen, 4-3 when you have teams in here fighting for their lives, I think you're going to take that.
I will take it. I think there's a lot of frustration about the lineup decisions, Dansby not being moved down other than today. Ian Happ in the third spot's been a consistent discussion for like 6 weeks now. I get it, right? Like I'm not, I understand sometimes me too. I can be frustrated about certain performances and decisions, but like they're going to live and die with this group, right? Like whether or not you move Seiya up or Hap down for the next like 2 weeks, like at this point, randomness is going to take over. This is the group. If Dansby Swanson, Jamer Candelario, assuming he comes back healthy, Seiya Suzuki, Ian Happ, if these guys don't hit, then it doesn't matter where they're going to bat. I mean, you look at the last 5 weeks now, 6 weeks, whatever, however you want to break it up. Dansby's WRC plus was pretty low. Yan Gomes was pretty low. Jamer really low. Burrell was like in the teens, Corey. So this is going to happen. You can be frustrated about not showing up as a group the past week, but overall, if the performances continue to be that low outside of the first 3 spots in the lineup, it doesn't matter where they're going to hit. I think overall, I'm not worried about the lineup. That's famous last words, right? But I'm actually not worried about it. I think there's enough depth where over the next few weeks, some guys will come out of it. Dansby today looking like he came out of it.
Yeah, nice game from Dansby today.
Yeah, and you see Ian Happ has actually been quite well the past 3-4 weeks. Seiya continues to look good. Nico continues to put up productive at-bats. Mike Tauchman still showcasing discipline. Like overall, my concern, as weird as it sounds, is really not focused on the lineup. I'm still drawing my, you can call it worry or anxiety or whatever you want to call it. I'm still drawing that attention to the middle of the bullpen and the back end of the rotation. To me, there's this large potential gap of the back end of the bullpen with Leiter, ALLCITY, and Merriweather to the middle guys like Wisniewski and Palencia and those guys. So I want to see that shored up. That's where my attention is.
Yeah, I mean, and you continue to see it, right? We talked about it a lot with that Red series, but you see it this weekend too. Like the bullpen management is going to be, I think, one of the most important things for this team going forward. It is for most teams, but you just got a lot of guys that are being pushed to their limit, throwing more innings than they have in their career before, certainly throwing
all of
more
them.
High leverage
all
innings,
of them. Merriweather,
right?
Leiter, ALLCITY, all of them. The first September ever.
Before. Yeah. And, I know it's frustrating, right? Sometimes these guys don't perform in a 1-0 game or anything like that, but, you got to remember, right? Like Adbert Alzolay, this is his first time closing. Mark Leiter Jr. is being elevated to high leverage relief. He was starting games for you last year. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Julian Merriweather was waived by the Toronto Blue Jays, right? Like this is, you're putting guys in big time positions and they're getting over their innings limit. So this is going to be a thing that they are going to have to manage. And it is going to be important for those guys like Palencia, like Jose Cuas, who has I think 1.17 ERA as a Cub. So
he's been great.
Good.
Yeah, making changes too.
Like Luke Little, like you're going to need these guys to come in and step up. Hayden Wisniewski with a really nice outing on Sunday. You're going to need to see more of that because the ability for David Ross to go to Leiter, Merriweather, ALLCITY every game is not. They're going to run out of gas, right? We're already sort of seeing it where you need to really be careful with how much you're using them. So that's going to be important, and that's I think why the offense. Their performance in those 3 losses to the Diamondbacks were particularly frustrating, right? Because you just have these guys going out there pitching pretty well, and you're asking them to hold 1-0, 2-0, 2-1, etc., things like that. So eventually, that's going to put a lot of pressure on a bullpen that is already not set up to handle that type of pressure. But Brendan, where I want to start getting into some of the specifics. And yes, we'll talk a little bit about that Yankees-Brewers game. Very weird situation there in New York. But Kyle Hendricks, man. Kyle Hendricks gave you the start that you needed. The starting rotation has been very good all week, but 5 2/3, 7 hits, 2 earned, 1 walk, and 4 strikeouts. A lot of those hits of the classic weak contact against Kyle Hendricks variety. Tommy Pham was seeing him well, hit the ball hard, but a lot of those kind of just bleeders falling in front of the outfielders. Kyle Hendricks has a 3.71 ERA. He picks up his 6th win of the year. We've talked about Kyle Hendricks a lot. You and I have been talking about Kyle Hendricks for 8 years now, right?
It's nice, yeah.
But there is little you can say about how good Kyle Hendricks has been for this team and how important him being this good has been to this rotation. Just outstanding again on Sunday, and he continues to be one of the people I think in the discussion outside of Justin Steele and Cody Bellinger for, kind of like low-key team MVPs for this group.
Beyond expectations, right? Like even looking at the rotation, you have Steele, who's exceeding expectations. Javier Assad recently exceeding expectations. Kyle Hendricks is exceeding expectations in that he's doing this every 5th day, and the overarching injury concerns aren't there right now. Like, to me, it's just, is he healthy? Is that capsular tear going to hold up? And by all intents and purposes, it is. The velocity today, Corey, still 88, 89. Touching 90 miles per hour over the past few weeks here. Like that is what we saw from Kyle in 2016. There was a moment in 2017 where like he came back and he started throwing 84, 85. And at that point, my brain was like dying. I'm like, there's no way that Kyle just went from 88 down to 85, 86. And that kind of persisted for a few years. And it was interesting because when he went down with his capsular tear, he actually referenced those years and how important it is for him to get back to 88, 89. We joked about it and his overall offseason throwing program to get his velocity back. But the difference between 88 and 85 may not seem significant, but for him, he said it himself, it is quite significant. So as I'm watching these games, I'm always dialing in on that velocity because that's what Kyle has said. Like when his velocity is that good, then he's his best version of himself. And every 5th day, 88, 89, 90, cutting changeups, sweeping other direction changeups to left-handed batters, it's a thing of beauty. It really is remarkable how reliable he is and how necessary he is for this team.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just some filthy. I mean, those swings from
disgusting.
Peterson and Carroll on the changeup, especially in the 1st inning. I mean, them like kind of reaching over into the other batter's box.
It's really classical Hendricks.
Classic Hendricks.
Yeah.
And yeah, again, just so important for this team that he's been such a stable feature, right? We've heard that Marcus Stroman is working to get back and possibly in a relief role. Sometime toward the middle of the month. We'll see if that happens. He has been throwing. Reports are that he's feeling good. It would be nice if he can be a part of this at all.
Anything, just
right?
give innings.
Any part of this pitching staff. If he can be Marcus Stroman, even if it's just for a few innings at a time, because obviously he's been out for some time now. It's tough to get stretched back up for just a couple weeks here, or maybe a month and a half if they go and win the World Series, right?
Ooh,
but
okay.
That would be very
You're in
helpful,
a good mood today,
right? Moving to Justin Steele, right? Just what a season he is having, and what a week he had. A couple of really nice starts for this team. Of course, he goes on Monday. The Cubs win 5-0 on the holiday Monday behind Justin Steele, taking that first game against the Giants. And Steele in this game, 8 innings, the longest of his career, 2 hits, no runs, 2 walks, and 12 strikeouts. He picks up his 16th win on Monday. Then, of course, he goes again this weekend against the Diamondbacks. Another stellar start for Justin Steele. And, Brendan, you start to look at this. On Saturday, it was 7 innings, 6 hits, 1 run, no walks, and 6 strikeouts. As we record this, Justin Steele is your ERA leader in Major League Baseball, number 1 on that list. Justin Steele has a 2.49 ERA, just ahead of Blake Snell for the Padres at 2.52. And with the 16 wins, Justin Steele is tied with Spencer Strider for the Major League lead. You can dig into a ton of categories. as it relates to pitching. I know, people looking at Strider and saying he's been a little unlucky, things like that. Snell pitching for a team that's not in the race. How the writers vote on this stuff varies, right? Some people will not vote for Snell because the Padres aren't winning, right? Some people will vote for Strider because they're looking at expected metrics, right? But for
do they really do that, you think? Honestly, expected metrics?
I'm just saying people vote for different things, right? Like, and they, they'll look at the strikeouts and things like that and give the edge to certain other guys. Steele, I'm going to be pissed if he doesn't win this award, man, and I think Monday against the Giants was sort of his signature start, at least so far. Going 8 innings on a brutally hot day at Wrigley Field, where for most of that game, the Cubs offense had only provided him with 1 run. For him to continue doing this, and at this point in the season, when he's over his innings mark, throwing more pitches than he ever has at the major league level, he goes out there and delivers the longest start of his career, Brendan. Yeah. I mean, that was just a signature moment. It reminded me a little of John Lester against the Giants, years ago, right? You remember that, when that felt like that kind of cemented them in that race?
I do.
This just, it had that feel. And, Justin is just that dude. And I mean,
that's coming from you, John Lester comps, Corey. That's big. That's the first time I've personally heard you make the comparison.
Well, I mean, it just felt like that kind of thing, especially just the same team against the Giants. So we'll see how they vote. It doesn't really matter. What matters is that he has been incredible for this team. The numbers speak for themselves, and unfortunately, he wasn't able to get the win on Saturday. The offense wasn't there for him. But 2 games against 2 teams you're trying to fend off in this wild card race, and he goes out there and deals both times. It's an incredible week for Justin Steele.
There's a lot of chatter on social about, some of his other metrics like whip and some of the what's called middling whip numbers, which is, kind of ridiculous. But Justin Steele is one of the most underappreciated pitchers in Major League Baseball, Corey. Not just from his on-field value, but the way he goes about actually getting the outs. You and I are lucky that he's on our team, that we get to see this every 5th day, because no other pitcher in Major League Baseball has his fastball, has that type of fastball, and then you couple that with this slider. And I showed this, I think, a few weeks ago, but I still want to show it again, because this is to me, it's remarkable. And what you're looking at here is his fastball shape. And in 2021, which is the top panel, this is the amount of cutting action as well as vertical break. But anything to the left of that red dashed line is fastballs thrown with arm side run. And then you can see last season that shifted to more cutting action, and that's persisted, and actually has been quite tight in 2023 as well. And I bring this up because that is what will give Justin Steele consistent success. No one, Corey, in Major League Baseball throws fastballs like that. And Steele has thrown over 1,500 of those fastballs this season. So when votes are being cast and we talk about expected metrics and the degree of error in expected metrics, that is ridiculous. What Justin Steele is showcasing is the ability to induce weak contact, to get strikeouts, to hammer the strike zone, and to do it with a pitch type that literally no other pitcher in Major League Baseball has. So he is, right now in my mind, the unequivocal Cy Young candidate. And going into next year, health, assuming is there, he'll be right back up there again. This is a unique pitch type. This is something that was developed last year. And to me, when we talk about the pitch lab and when there's jokes made about the pitch lab not working, it's a ridiculous name. But the efforts from these coaches and from the scouts to get Justin Steele to the point of being an average pitcher, not even 15, 16 months ago, to a legitimate, undeniable Cy Young Award candidate, perhaps winner, is insane, Corey. And that is the value of Tommy Hotovy, Craig Breslow, Daniel Moskowitz, Craig Jacobson, all of those guys. And I think when I show charts like that, I hope it like provides some complimentary appreciation to what he's done. This is insane.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, leads Major League Baseball in ERA, the second best FIP if you're looking at that, fielding independent pitching, second best in FWAR. We are a Fangraphs WAR family. It's Justin Steele, man.
It's Justin Steele.
Incredible season for Justin. And yes, thank you to everyone in the chat updating us. So a weird one in New York today, but the Brewers do lose. The Brewers were getting no hit. I was at the game, so the chat will have to remind me. I think they were getting no hit into the 10th inning by the Milwaukee Brewers, but the Brewers could not score. They end up going 1 run each in the 11th, 2 runs each in the 12th, and 1 run in the 13th for the Yankees, who win the game. So the Cubs now sit just 3 games behind the Milwaukee Brewers in the division. So that is certainly still in play, and you just got to keep putting your head down and trying to get W's. So, yeah. That's always a nice update. So we will take a look at the full picture because I think there's still a couple games going on right now. So we'll take a look at the full picture for the playoffs for the Cubs as we get towards the end of the show, set you up, as we head out west and go out for the week.
So let's take a quick break here, then we'll get back into it. For our sponsors, first of which is Ray CDJR. Get your ducks in a row because it's the grand reopening of Ray CDJR in Fox Lake. Flock in to Ray CDJR and celebrate their Get Ducked event with free prizes and your chance to win $1,000 plus during Jeep Adventure Days. Get employee pricing on all new 2023 Jeep Gladiator models. The grand reopening of Ray CDJR in Fox Lake is only on this week, but our savings are all month long. Second break here from our sponsor, Shady Rays. Take on the sun with gear built to last. Our friends at Shady Rays have you covered for the warm weather ahead with premium polarized shades at an affordable price. Shady Rays is an independent sunglass company that offers a world-class product that's just as good as any expensive pair we've worn. Durable frames and extremely clear optics for outdoor adventures like going to watch the Cubs win. That's not all. Shady Rays offers the most insane protection program in all of eyewear. Every pair of sunglasses is backed by lost and broken replacements. If you lose or break your pair, even on day one, they told us they'll send you a brand new pair, no questions asked. Wear your Shady Rays with confidence because they have your back long after you purchase, and together with their customers, Shady Rays is providing much-needed support to nonprofit partners across the U.S. to Shady Rays Impact, from building playsets for pediatric cancer patients to providing young adults with MS the outdoor adventure of a lifetime. Shady Rays is making an impact in your community and others like it now and for years to come. If you don't love your Shady Rays, exchange them for a new pair or return them for free within 30 days. There's no risk when you shop. Their team always has your back. Exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the season. Go to shadyrays.com. Use code CHGO for 50% off 2 or more pairs of polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself. The shades rated 5 stars by over 250,000 people. Corey.
Yes. And again, thank you to the chat. I misspoke. The Yankees were the ones being no-hit, not the Brewers. Oh, okay. The Brewers were throwing the no-hitter, which is funnier because then they lost in 13 innings. So 3 games in the division. Want to go to – we had some milestones out at beautiful historic Wrigley Field on Sunday. Cody Bellinger blasting his 25th home run of the year. He also has 20 stolen bases. He joins pretty exclusive company, Brendan, and some big-time names in Chicago Cubs history as having a season with 25 homers and 20 stolen bases. And, of course, Cody is not done, right? Might get to 30-25, perhaps. Wow. But 25 homers and 20 stolen bases in a season for the Chicago Cubs. Sammy Sosa, Ryan Sandberg, Javier Baez, and Cody Bellinger. That's it.
Well, there you go. There you go.
It's good
That's
company
good.
to be in.
That's good company right there. I didn't even realize Javi was in that category. Like, that's just insane, the production he used to put up. But man, like, how do you not appreciate the importance of Cody Bellinger this season and what he continues to do, even when he may be going through some funks, the plate approach that he's providing, two-strike approach, the B-hack approach, always putting the ball in play, having batted balls on like a good line, his like sweet spot is among the best in Major League Baseball. Just phenomenal. And that's where I go back on my thinking of this lineup, is when Cody Bellinger is your anchor and you have guys with track records like Dansby, like Ian Hassman doing well, like in an 18-game window, which is now where we are, like I almost don't even care for talking about lineup construction or like who should be playing right now. Like, to me, it's like anything can happen. And when you have guys in this lineup like those that I just mentioned, it's just a matter of now here we are in middle September. In a month from now, we may not even be talking about this team like ever again. Like this is how baseball is. For the time being, I'm just going to enjoy the production, kind of just be in the moment, see if it works out. There's nothing you and I can do about this. There's really not much the front office can do. There's not much David Ross can do. Well, I complain about a lot of things on Twitter. Actually, I've been a lot better about that on Twitter recently.
Yeah.
But like, I think that's where my thinking is like, this is not April and May anymore. This is not like you and I wanting Morel to get more at bats anymore. Like, this is it. Like, anything can happen at this point. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah. I mean, I don't necessarily have a strong disagreement.
You just have a slight disagreement.
Well, I mean, I did think throughout this week that it would have been a good idea to maybe give one or two guys a rest throughout the week.
Like who?
I mean, I think Dansby could have used a day off. I think Nico could have.
He had a great day off today.
Sure, I think Candy could have used a day off. But ultimately, like, the answers on the bench are certainly not clear, right? Like, Wisdom is who he is, right? He's a very low average hitter, but maybe he runs into one. Morel, really nice game on Sunday, but he, coming into it was pretty cold. Canario, we know nothing about because he has just not seen the field. Clearly, they're not confident, or, that's just not the direction they're going with that.
Yeah.
So it is what it is, right?
Can we talk about Dansby, though? I do want to just bring that up.
I was just going to finish on Belly that I think he, again, what can you really say about it? I think he has to be your number one priority in the offseason. I saw a comment earlier in the chat, like, he maybe not single-handedly, but like his play is the reason that we're here right now. The way that he has carried this offense and the production that he has provided is such a massive reason why the team turned things around in that few-week stretch heading into the trade deadline, and where, obviously, like, they would be nowhere without Cody Bellinger.
He's the main reason why we're here.
And, you watch him on a day like today, they have to bring in Talkman sometimes, right, because Candy's out. He's out in center. He's at first. Like, he'll do whatever you want for the team. He's stealing bases. He's hitting homers.
Yeah, he's unreal.
You can't say enough about what Cody Bellinger has done. But yes, moving to Dansby Swanson, Dansby with a homer, really nice day on Sunday, and I thought just the quality of contact looked better from him on Sunday. He made that one play charging in from short, and I don't know if they showed this on the broadcast or not, but he was feeling himself, man. He was running off the field.
You gotta check my Twitter. You gotta check my Twitter. It's all over there.
I have you muted.
Well, that's fair.
But he was
kind of hurts me, though.
Really feeling it. He was feeling himself, and it was nice to see him have a really nice day with his 20th homer today, a third straight season of 20-plus homers for Dansby Swanson. And I think you put it really well when you said it on Twitter. I did see this one.
Oh, okay. Okay.
He's hitting 20 homers. He's playing the best defense shortstop in the game. We're very lucky to have Dansby Swanson.
We are. And then I started, like, when Dansby's going through his funk, and when any guys go through different lows, there's sometimes different explanations for it. Like with Seiya Suzuki earlier on, like you can kind of visually see what he was going through. Maybe the aggressiveness wasn't quite there. The the timing wasn't there according to David Ross and Dustin Kelly. And then there's different reasons for why guys go through funks as well. That's not necessarily aligned with just, being bad per se. And so when you look at Dansby Swanson, what's interesting about Dansby is that over the last month, 3-4 weeks, specifically in his last 50 to 100 plate appearances, within a 100 plate appearance window, his contact rate is around 78%. And then you shrink that down a little bit more, around 50 plate appearances, 83%. The reason I bring this up is because his overall contact rate is around 71%. And so when you see an extreme like that, especially that's not a small sample size, 50 to 100 plate appearances is quite large for that. When that happens, when you see over 80%, I think, that's interesting. Like, what's going on there? And then likewise, his overall chase rate has also gone up from like 22% now to 30%. And the quality of contact has gone down. The exit velocity has gone down. But to me, that's not discouraging, because let's put this in a different context. Let's say his plate approach stayed exactly the same, and then his exit velo just went down, but everything else stayed the same. I would be worried about that. I'll be like, all right, something's wrong here, because he's doing everything he normally does, but now the quality of contact just escaped him. This is different. This is the quantity of contact has gone up pretty significantly, but the quality has gone down. What is going on? That could signal some type of adjustment phase, right? Sometimes you kind of have to go through these adjustment phases, find what works, adjust the pictures, adjust scouting reports, and you're kind of seeing that, I think, in the form of just greater contact, some greater aggression that you typically have not seen from Dansby. But that is important to me, because that sometimes prefaces breakouts like you saw on Sunday, because you have to go through that iteration, fail fast and adjust. And I think with Dansby, that might happen. And at the very least, if this approach change that he's been obviously kind of experimenting with, if that doesn't work, he'll go on to the next adjustment phase. And eventually, because he has that track record, the good news is he's going to figure it out, right? In 18 games, I hope he figures it out relatively soon. But there's no doubt in my mind that what we're seeing from Dansby in the past 3 weeks here is not who he is whatsoever. And I would not be surprised, given all of the different changes we've been seeing for the past 2-3 weeks, if we see it as soon as this week. He's one of those veterans you have to trust in the same light as we talk about Cody Bellinger and Kyle Hendricks and those guys.
Yeah. So as we sit here, Dansby with a 3-hit effort on Sunday. Of course, he hits the homer, drives in 2, a 107 WRC plus on the season right at this moment, which would be the 3rd highest total of his career. And he has already been worth 4.0 wins above replacement, which, Brendan, would be the 2nd most valuable season of his career, not including last year with the Braves, which was his most valuable. So, you can look at WAR however you want. I'm not going to, campaign for it here, but always interesting to look that when you're combining his offensive, defense, base running, 2nd most valuable season. We continue to look back on the shortstop decision this offseason, et cetera. And I think, it's been said before that Dansby was not the consolation prize of that group. He was the best player, and he's playing like it.
And the amount of money they're paying him is
right.
$100 million less.
When you said it too, and I mean, this is sort of obvious, right? We knew he was a great defender, but you said this, I think either yesterday or today, the level of comfort, especially when you're watching on TV and you can't see where the defenders are, you don't know where the ball is going exactly, but you just see an opposing hitter ball off the bat. If you know it's going to the 6 hole, you feel like Dansby, it's going to be an out.
And most of the time it is. It's the most comforting experience as a baseball fan. And with his offense, just to finish it up here, he's going to have to change things as he ages, because typically the profile he showcases does not age that well. That's something that I think he can get to and get over that adjustment next season, the season after. I have confidence he's going to do it. It's the same type of thinking I have with certain players, that maybe the numbers you look at like it speaks to you in a way that's not encouraging. But there are some guys who adjust in unpredictable ways who just have that like that intellect and that ability to implement adjustments. And I think Dansby is one of those guys.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do want to talk about Jameson Taillon and what specifically went into this start against the Diamondbacks, because obviously now if you're a fan of CHGO and you follow us on social media, you'll know that the real reason he turned it around is because Cody was granted an exception to take Taillon in Who You Got. We don't normally allow pitchers anymore. But of course, Cody does that, and then Taillon spins I think the Yankees outing was better, but one of his best outings of the year. So I'm curious, as we go down the stretch here, was this just good luck from Taillon? Was something different? Was the pitch mix different? Was there anything in this start that allows us to say, hey, build on this for the next few weeks? Or are we still in this, like, he doesn't know, how much his fastball is running? Who knows what's going to happen each time he goes out there?
Yeah, in a one start observation, sometimes it's hard to figure out what's different or just a byproduct of the lineup he's facing. But regardless of that, he was good against the Diamondbacks. He looked good. And his cutter in particular was quite strong. And that was one pitch I thought maybe we'll see more against left-handed batters. But he threw it mostly to right-handed batters. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So if you look at what he did, and here's the spray charts against Diamondbacks, all those brown pitches you're seeing are cutters, and they're down and away to right-handed batters. And you can see most of the pitches you see there, they're brown cutters. And he was able to, in the same window, throw a sweeping slider to wipe out those hitters. He didn't throw many red four-seam fastballs. And so it was basically against righties, sweeper and cutter. And that was the way he got batters out. Now, if you look at what he did to lefties, he did throw the four-seam fastball and the curveball as his two dominant pitch types. The command was better on both those pitch types, but counterintuitively to me, I thought maybe we would see cutters to lefties, but there might be an argument to be had that Tommy Hotovy thinks, despite the four-seam problems, that in order for him to have success against left-handed batters, he needs to show that. That way you can use that north to south curveball. And that's how he got his left-handed batters out against the Diamondbacks as well. It's just that north to south curveball. And then one other note on Taillon that does look different. And again, it's hard to tell like what's going on with this, but if you look at his cutter, he started the year throwing cutters around 89 miles per hour. And then about a month ago, that shrunk down to about 87.5 to 88. And then if you look at his start against Diamondbacks, that went down to like 86 miles per hour. I'm like, oh, that's weird. That's quite interesting as well. So his cutter was being thrown about 2 miles per hour slower. And it has gone down a little bit month by month. But to me, that signals he's doing something different, perhaps, to his cutter. Or maybe it's just based on the location he's from. I don't know. But his cutter was different last start. And anytime you see something as dramatic as a cutter that's thrown like 1.5 miles slower, that to me draws attention. And I want to see one more start, get one more start. If it happens again, I think there's something there.
Yeah, I mean, look, credit to Taillon, though, right? Like, first of all, for sure, there's something, it's not funny. I didn't think it was funny on Friday, but there's something like, I don't know, funny about the universe that Taillon spins, 6 shutout innings, right? Going inning for inning with Zach Gallen, and then the Cubs lose 1-0, right? They can't score a single run. Taillon finally delivers that start. It's not funny, but, I don't know. They won today, so it's funny for now. Credit to Taillon, right? Like, the one thing Cody, we've said about him, and a lot of people have said about him, I know our guy Ryan Herrera, when he's at the ballpark, Jared Willis, when he's at the ballpark, Taillon is very open about his struggles. He's not making excuses. He's not hiding it. He's been, as you've noted many times, been very open about like, hey, I don't know what's going on with my fastball, right? I'm just going to tell you guys straight up. So these guys get paid a lot of money. They're out there doing their job. So, you're not patting him on the back for saying, hey, I stunk today, right? But for him to keep it together, make some subtle adjustments or big-time adjustments, we don't know yet, in the middle of a playoff race against a team they needed to beat, right? And he matched a really, really good pitcher in Galen. That was a big start from Taillon. The Cubs' offense wasn't able to pay it off, but for Taillon to bounce back from some of the bad starts that he's had, stay with it, and give the Cubs a winnable game there, even though they didn't win it, that's really big. And if he can continue to do that going forward here, he doesn't need to throw 6 shutout innings with 9 strikeouts like he did against the Diamondbacks in this series. But winnable starts for this team would be absolutely massive with where this pitching staff is.
Yeah. All right. Another break here from our sponsors, and we'll get back into it. First of which is from Goose Island. CHGO is supported by Goose Island Beer Company. Chicago's beer since 1988. They have a very deep beer roster. They have the 312 Wheat Ale, my personal favorite. They also have the Oktoberfest, and they have the Full Pocket Pilsner, an everyday beer. It's what the brewers are drinking. Grab ultra-fresh, brewery-exclusive beers at Goose Island's original brewhouse on Clybourne Avenue in Lincoln Park, or from their tap room on Fulton Street in West Town. Goose Island Beer Company, Chicago's beer. The last break here from our sponsor, Fubo. Fubo has over 140 live channels of sports, shows, movies, and news. You can stream live TV from any device. You can start watching immediately, Corey, with a free trial. No contract, no cable, no hassle. Just sign up and start watching. You can watch your local teams even while you travel. College football is back. The Bears are playing right now. A lot of Bears chatter in this chat, which is funny. U.S. Open tennis. They have the UEFA Euro qualifiers, the Ryder Cup. A lot of sports coming up. You can watch all your favorite sporting events and whatever else you want to watch on TV with Fubo. Go to www.fubotv.com/CHGO to sign up for 15% off Fubo Pro, Corey.
All right, Brendan, since you mentioned it, I do want to give a shout out. I don't know what's going on, but reading my timeline, it sounds like people are a little frustrated with how this Bears game has started. But I do want to point out CHGO, best Bears coverage in the city. They had a wonderful tailgate this morning. I was at beautiful historic Wrigley Field, making sure I pay attention to talk about the Cubs.
Thank you for your time.
But great tailgates, drinks, food, games, etc. I know they're doing a live watch along now. They'll have pre and post game written stuff at all CHGO. Our Bears team is excellent. They provide excellent coverage. If you are a Bears fan, be sure you are checking out everything that the CHGO Bears team is pumping out, and don't miss the next tailgate because they are great events. So moving on, I want to talk about Seiya Suzuki. Brendan moved up to the 3-hole today in the little, sort of lineup shuffling that we did see on Sunday. And I know you've, I think, tweeted about this and talked about it before, but the change in aggressiveness for Seiya and what that has led to. And, I was sitting at the game today and looked up at his numbers. The OPS is over 800 now, right? You just hear the ball coming off his bat. It's a much louder sound. He popped one up later in the game and threw his bat down in disgust. He's at the point where he's out of this funk, and he's expecting to hit piss rockets every time. This is a really important development, not only for the rest of Seiya's tenure as a Chicago Cub, but of course, as we've seen some inconsistencies from this offense, like Seiya coming back into this guy and going on one of these heaters is really, really a big development for this offense. Yeah,
there was a point where he was demoted to not regular playing time in early August, where I started to think, man, can you rely on Seiya the rest of the season? Is this going to have to be an off-season thing where he addresses? And, to his credit, almost immediately, he takes that week off and he comes back. And he puts up, I think since the middle of August, over a 440 weighted on base average. And now he's going from the back of the lineup, perhaps to the 3 spot. And what you said right there, he's not happy when he's just missing pitches anymore. He expects to hit balls hard every single at bat. That is the sign of confidence that you want to see. And I go back to what Dustin Kelly said. I go back to what other coaches said about Seiya. He is among the best pure hitting data metrics on this team, which is pretty significant considering who's on this team. Yeah. And it's just a matter of him being comfortable getting his timing down. We know he has that higher leg stride. Dansby Swanson also has that high leg stride that sometimes leaves certain players susceptible to timing issues. And, with Seiya, he's now your guy, I think, in the next 2.5 weeks, where absent anything significant, you just kind of assume he's going to be a provider. And to me, again, you put me back in my mindset 6 weeks ago, I would have been surprised to have moved to that position so fast. So good for him and good for us.
Yeah, I mean, look, and, this is one where, of course, Ross sitting him for, I think it was just like 4 games, right?
Yeah, it was like just 1 week.
Isn't necessarily, there's obviously changes that have taken place. He's approaching his at-bats differently than he was. But credit to Ross, man. Like, that's not an
You're a big Ross guy.
Yeah, don't say that. It's not an easy thing to do, right? Like, Seiya's a high-paid player. It's his second year. He's obviously a big part of this team's plans, but he was struggling really hard, and David Ross didn't shy away from saying, hey, you can't be out there right now. We've got that with Tauchman was a lot hotter at the time. Morel was hotter at the time, and it was the right decision, and it has certainly paid off for this team. But, I mean, look at these numbers, Brendan. Seiya Suzuki's last 30 games, 112 at-bats. He has 40 hits, 7 homers, 22 RBIs, 20 strikeouts to 9 walks. His slash line, Brendan, 357, 402, 705. That is an 1107 OPS in his last 112 at bats. I mean, this is a significant sample here. He has been incredible in this stretch, and it's could not have come at a better time, right? Like, they needed it, right? Candy is struggling a little bit. Some of these other guys have not been consistent. They needed this version of Seiya, and if they can keep it here, if this is who he is, right, for the rest of his career, that's a huge development. But just for this offense in 2023, they desperately needed this, and you see it, right? Like when Ross needed to move somebody up on Sunday, who's his choice? Seiya Suzuki.
Seiya Suzuki. And the defense, too. The defense has been
he was so close to making that catch the other day.
Oh, my God, man. But, like, the defense has been so demonstrably better this year than last year. Like, to your point, like, he almost had that one like bouncer when he came in. Those batted balls where he's coming in so fast is so much different than last season. Yeah. There's times where I'm like, wow, he's getting jumps that like Jason Hayward used to get during his like peak defensive days. Strong words defensively, but that is also something that he has worked hard at, getting to a point where he's comfortable in ballparks outside with triple decks outside. Those are difficult stadiums to play in. There was a moment in Philadelphia earlier in the season, I think it was like maybe late April when he just came back from his oblique injury, maybe early May, and he dropped a fly ball in right field. And there's a point in time where I'm like, can this guy play right field? Like, is it that big of a problem where he's losing baseballs like in Philadelphia at night? And ever since then, he's just come back and he's performed exceptionally defensively. This is separate from his actual offense. Yeah. So huge to see, especially for that contract too. He's exceeding his contract, like the amount he's being paid.
And that was one too, where we knew that over in Japan in the NPB, he had won defensive accolades. So
he was the best.
Weird. Yeah,
he's the best right fielder.
It was weird that but of course it makes a lot of sense, right? I think it's easy to forget, especially because it's his second year now, that there is a really significant adjustment to coming over. Like you said, you're playing outside a lot more, playing on natural grass a lot more. You're dealing with oddly constructed stadiums a lot more, especially at Wrigley with those, right and left field wells and things like that. You've got a brick wall behind you now. So he's clearly adjusted on defense. And, of course, we're seeing on offense that he's red hot. So hopefully he can keep it that way, because it is nice when someone other than Cody Bellinger feels like, you're like excited to see them come up. So a lot of chatter in the chat, as a chat is supposed to do. We are reading the chat, Barb, always. But
why do you always say that, Barb? I told you earlier in the week, Barb, I will read the chat.
Yeah, always.
You're making me sad, Barb.
There's a lot of questions. David Ross addressed the Alexander Canario thing. They brought him up. They're happy that he's getting a lot of this experience. being in the clubhouse, being around a playoff race, being able to work with the major league coaches and have that experience being around guys like Dansby Swanson. And Ross has said, look, these are the guys that got us here. These are the guys that are going to play. And, whether that provides opportunities for him or not, in terms of pinch hitting or things like that, we'll see if Candy misses time and how that affects things, how they move things around at DH or first and third base. But that's what they've stated. The only real issue I have with that at this point, I'd like to see it just because, maybe you can see some pop. I think especially in, maybe the Gallon game, perhaps, like you're having trouble stringing hits together. I wouldn't have had a problem with somebody just trying to come in and pop one. Didn't have to be Canario. Could have been Morel or Wisdom. But, it is what it is. This is the group that they're going to roll with, and they're going to try to win. The only issue I had with it is it's just not really how Jed Hoyer laid it out. I think that would have avoided a lot of the sort of anger, I guess, if you will, about Canario's playing time. Is like when they did that press conference or the media scrum, I think in Cincinnati in the middle of that doubleheader, like Jed Hoyer was talking about how he might be able to provide a little bit to the offense, right? He certainly did not say he's come up to enjoy the experience.
I would love to be called up myself. Yeah, enjoy the experience.
So I think if he had just not phrased it that way, people would have taken it differently. And I think the next morning, David Ross on the radio was like, we're not really going to play him. Like, he's at the bottom of the depth chart. Like, don't get too excited about it. So I think that's really where a lot of the confusion came from, is Jed Hoyer just didn't really phrase it that way in that sort of initial media scrum when he got called up. And that's why everybody that Friday night was like, is he going to play? Is he making his debut in Cincinnati? Blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? So I think that would have avoided a lot of it. As far as, a lot of the chat really doesn't like Patrick Wisdom. And I understand sort of, but again, this is the group that got him here. This is who's going to play. Patrick Wisdom will get in there from time to time. He'll pinch hit, etc. When they need a home run, that's how they're going to use him. So a lot going on. Do you want to talk? Is there anybody we missed, or do you want to talk about the bullpen at all and kind of how they're using things? The one thing that I don't know if you and I have talked about a lot, but I know, Cody, Ryan, and Luke have touched on it. What you want to talk about a win for Jed Hoyer? Julian Merryweather. Julian Merryweather is nasty, and the Cubs picked him up off waivers, and you have a guy who is a legitimate high leverage reliever. I mean, I love watching Julian Merryweather pitch, man.
Yeah, well, he's also team controlled for more years too, so it's not just this 1 year. And again, it goes to what drives successful franchises is the ability to have scouts find pitchers that they know if they target and the front office acquires, that their coaches can optimize. And that is an example of Julian Merryweather. And I think it's an example with even Jose Cuas right now. Like when Cuas was acquired and you see some of the underlying metrics, it's like, I don't quite see it for this year. I could see the intention of acquiring Cuas over the offseason. He has that unique release point. They've had success with certain pitchers with unique release points and developing breaking pitches. But when Cuas was acquired, I'm like, oh man, like I wish we got more than Cuas, because I don't know if you could rely on Cuas being a guy through October or through September. And he's been that. He's been one of the better relievers and one of the guys whom Ross has relied upon. And what he's done since being acquired by the Cubs is actually kind of insane what he's doing. So he developed a new pitch, Corey. Jose Cuas developed a new pitch. And he actually developed a slider in 2 weeks. So I'll show a graph here. I love this graph. So if you look at this... it's a good graph, Corey. If you look at this is his slider horizontal break. So as the line goes up, that means the slider is breaking more, has more sweeping action. And I blocked out 3 portions of this graph. You have like a gray block, you have a green block, and you have a red block. And the gray block is when the Cubs acquired him. And his slider was moving around 2.5, 3 inches of horizontal break. Then there's this green block there. This is that White Sox series, and at the start and end of the series, you had an off day. He didn't pitch this week. And then he comes back after that series, and boom, right away, he's throwing a slider with 10 inches of horizontal break. I'm like, okay, that's interesting. Let's see if this continues. Next outing, same thing. Next outing, same thing. Next outing, same thing. And that's persisted. And so Ryan, our guy Ryan, and I are working on a story about this, but we actually talked to Jose Cuas about this already. And he said, yeah, I developed a new slider. And yeah, it was during that White Sox series I developed it. And so you're talking about a guy who was targeted by the Cubs, gave up Nelson Velasquez, who's having success with the Royals, but Cubs targeted Cuas. They did not wait. They said, get comfortable for 10 days. We're going to give you a new slider. And he's been able to take this slider that they've been working on and use it with success almost instantly. That is unbelievably difficult to do. And again, his ERA, I think, is what, 1.1, 1.2 since being a Cub. Insane. And now now that slider is grading among the best sliders for relievers in professional baseball from that release point.
Well, so
I mean, it's insane.
I'm curious for you, when you look at Cuas, in terms of results, the results have been very good, right, for the Cubs. He pitches just a third of an inning on Sunday, but gets the out. But the sort of like, if you're looking at like FIP and stuff, right, they're not big fans because his walk rate is currently higher than his K rate as a Cub. So in terms of giving up the runs, it hasn't been there. Do you think that as he integrates the new pitches and sort of makes these adjustments, that those sort of peripherals will fall more in line with the ERA, or does it concern you in terms of just how wild he can be sometimes, or, especially when you're dealing with a guy with an unorthodox delivery, that's sometimes just something you have to live with? I guess I'm asking, how do you reconcile? It's a pretty steep difference in like his ERA and when you look at like FIP or some of those expected numbers because of the walk totals and lower strikeout totals.
Yeah, this is where ERA and FIP and all that, like, I don't care about it.
Okay, sure.
Like, it's such a small sample that when you talk to Cuas and you ask him, hey, what's going on? He said, I developed a new slider. For the first few outings, I didn't have a good feel for it. Now I have a good feel for it. I'm like, okay. So when we talk about FIP, you're talking about a sample in which he's not the same guy anymore. So why use that sample to say, oh, his FIP sucks, when he just told us he's not that pitcher anymore? So yeah, like, he needs to improve the walk rate, of course. That's obvious. And if he doesn't improve the walk rate, then yeah, there might be some issues going forward. But when the pitcher himself tells us, Corey, that he developed a new slider, that he actually has feel for it, I don't care about any of the numbers. Like, I hope that over the next 2 weeks and next year that he has success in the form of not walking guys. And I think this is one way of getting to that point. Of course, ERA matters, FIP matters, all that stuff matters, but it's not an appropriate evaluation metric right now. It doesn't hold any relevance to me. The relevance is that he has a new pitch. He needs to grow comfortable with it. He says he's growing comfortable with it, and he's missing bats.
That's a good answer. I mean, that's why I asked the question, right?
Yeah.
Because I think if people go and look real quick, you'll look at sort of the discrepancy in those numbers, but that's the important context. So when you look at this bullpen right now, right? Who is in your circle of trust, right?
Wow.
Because I think it's a relevant discussion because we've seen this team play a lot of close games, right? Like, we knew that this offense might have some inconsistencies. We've said it a million times, right? Jed Hoyer said, I think this offseason, the best teams blow teams out. And this offense wasn't necessarily constructed where you're thinking, yeah, they're going to blow everybody out every night, right? It's okay. It's who they are, right? You have several guys who are more contact heavy, and combined with their defense and base running, it's a more full value thing than just being like a juggernaut offensive hitter. But they're going to play a lot of close games is the point. We've seen it. We saw it in Cincinnati. We saw it this weekend with Arizona. They're going to play tight, low-scoring games, and especially that's often what you see in the playoffs. You have a bullpen that has some guys that are being asked to do a lot, right? We've talked about it. I mentioned it earlier in the show. You look at Adbert Alzolay, Mark Leiter Jr., even Julian Merriweather. These are guys who are being thrust and being asked to be the back end of a high-leverage, playoff contending bullpen, and that's a tall order for them. It's not something that they've done before. It's not a role they've occupied before. You're seeing guys hitting innings limits, etc. You've got different guys trying out new or different roles. Drew Smyly is a reliever now, right? Like Hayden Wesneski has had some really nice outings recently where he's looked more like the guy we saw when he made his debut last year toward the end of the year. If Marcus Stroman comes back, let's say he's a multi-inning reliever, if he comes back, if they decide not to like use him as an opener or however they deploy him, how do you think this bullpen is best constructed? And I think a sort of sub-question to that, when you have a week like this and you go back to that Red Series, et cetera, where you see them play so many games where it's 1-0 or 2-0, 2-1, and you need to cover 2 to 3 innings to close out a close win, how do they best deploy that? Because we've seen that asking Leiter and ALLCITY to do it every day is not a good strategy. These guys are getting gassed. They're being overworked. They're being asked to be relievers that they're not, at least yet. How should they best go about this as we head down the stretch here?
I honestly have no qualms with what Ross has been doing with the bullpen. I think it all makes sense. I think you can kind of get into the nitpicky range, like, oh, I wish, Leiter didn't pitch that day, or I wish Wisniewski kind of went the distance. Like, I understand all of that. But I also understand there's a degree of uncertainty that you and I have as fans from the outside looking in. Ideally, this team needs to miss bats in the back end of the bullpen. So the guys who missed the most bats on this team are 1, Adbert Alzolay, 2, Julian Merriweather, 3, in a very shortened window, I think you could see even Hayden Wesneski miss those bats with that white ball slider. 2, right-handed batters. Michael Fulmer, when he comes back, is among the same guys. I look at Michael Fulmer and Wisniewski in the same context. Like, I think their pitch types are so similar in that both have a dominant wipeout slider, which is crazy to think about with Michael Fulmer because he didn't have that 4 months ago. And they have cutters that they don't have good feel for right now, which is also crazy for Fulmer because he had a feel for his cutter when he was signed by the Cubs. So my circle of trust probably aligns with Ross at this point. I think on the edge of the trust is Fulmer, assuming is healthy,
right?
Is Wisniewski in 1 inning samples. I don't want Wisniewski to go through like at this point with the Cubs' current bullpen, assuming that there's issues with Leiter and ALLCITY in innings. As crazy as it sounds, I would like Wisniewski to get opportunities in 1 inning, max out everything rolls. Go out there and throw 99 miles per hour, which he did last week, and use that sweeping slider to right-handed batters. Don't do it against lefties. Still have a lefty guy in case you can't get hidden through that part of the order. But to me, I think on the edge is Wisniewski, Michael Fulmer. We had a comment about Brandon Hughes. Man, if Hughes can come back from that knee injury, and he's in Iowa this week, and honestly, he may get called up this week. I don't know. It's just my speculation. But if he's healthy, and if he's anywhere close to the same guys last year, that's an unbelievable addition to this bullpen. Because then you insert him into the insurance policy for Leiter, who's your lefty guy at this point. So on the edge, going back to this on the edge of the circle, is Fulmer, Wisniewski, Brandon Hughes as those 3 guys. Jose Cuas, even though we've talked about the slider, to your earlier point, he still needs to grow comfortable with the pitch. And even though he's expressing growing comfort, nevertheless, he still needs to see it. So he's like on the edge, but a little bit further back than like Wisniewski, Fulmer, and Brandon Hughes.
Yeah, so the reinforcements would be obviously
massive,
a huge thing. So Michael Fulmer threw a bullpen on Saturday, supposed to throw again in the next day or so. Like we said, Marcus Stroman is supposed to throw a bullpen, I believe, tomorrow. On Monday, he's still working out at the complex in Arizona. Like you said, Brandon Hughes working his way back. But, where those guys are when they come back is obviously a question we can't answer
yet. Don't know.
But if you can get, even one of those guys in true form and in their actual kind of solid form, that would be massive. And if for nothing else, then to just give David Ross other options than Merriweather, Leiter, and ALLCITY, because that is going to be a huge thing to watch going forward. You've seen it over the last few weeks. You cannot ask those guys to throw every day. Their performance is not as good, clearly, when they are overused. But when they've tried guys like Palencia or things like that in the higher leverage, that's a tall order, right? So getting Fulmer back and having him be able to be the kind of early inning fireman that he was before he went on the injured list, or Brandon Hughes coming back and pitching like he did last year, or, I don't know what short inning Stroman looks like, right? But it sounds cool. If you can get that, that is a massive upgrade, not just because of those guys' performance, but what it would allow David Ross to do with those back end guys and just not use them every day when you're playing so many close games.
Yeah. Of the guys we talked about, I think if I had to pick one, if I just take one guy, I'm only allowed to pick one guy who I want to be back in that circle of trust.
And they're healthy and good.
And they're healthy and good. If I take one guy, I would love Brandon Hughes to come back because he breaks up the handedness in the bullpen. And I think that's so valuable in the 7th innings, 8th innings, because let's say Leiter does draw back a little bit. Honestly, the only guy in the bullpen that can get lefties out is your two back end guys. It's ALLCITY and Merriweather because they have that tight breaking slider. So if you're in the 7th inning and you can't rely on Leiter, you can't rely on anyone else to get those lefties out. So I'm worried about that. So if you can insert Hughes back in that mix, it does solve a lot of problems. And then we had a comment about Luke Little. Luke Little's very interesting too. Like I kind of put him further back in that circle of trust conversation just because he's had like massive command issues before he was called up. But like that sweeping slider is no joke. That thing has 17 inches of horizontal break. He has a crazy release point. He's a massive human being. He has extension that's far greater than most pitchers in the league. If he's showcasing command, if he looks the part as he did in his debut, then yes, absolutely. You put him in that late leverage, high leverage role. I think if the Cubs coaching staff were comfortable with him, we would have seen it this weekend a little bit more, but we didn't see it. So that signals to me they're not quite comfortable with him there yet. And in Saturday's game, going to Palencia in the 10th inning highlighted my problems and my concern with the bullpen. Because again, it's basically ALLCITY and Merriweather or bust at this point. And there has to be some type of like pillow of insurance that when it's not those two guys, they can get guys out. Like Palencia, that's an unfair situation for him to be in the 10th inning. He's not ready yet. Like his command's just not there yet. His slider feel's not there yet. That's an unfair situation, but he's the guy because he throws 100 miles per hour.
Yeah, so that is, of course, one of the key developments here. Reinforcements would be massive, a very welcome, homecoming for some of these guys. One more ad break here from our sponsor, DraftKings, and then we will set the table for this coming week. Look at the standings, look at the schedule, and then we will let you get on with your NFL Sunday, if that is how you choose to spend the rest of your Sunday. But want to give a shout-out to our friends at DraftKings. 7 long months without the NFL, but of course we are back. Games started on Thursday. The Bears are playing right now, and it is good to have the NFL back. And DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, is giving you a can't-miss offer for Week 1. This week, new customers get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5 on any NFL game. DraftKings is hooking everyone up with game day greatness. All customers can take advantage of 2 new offers every single game day this September. Check the DraftKings app to see what you get. Download the DraftKings app now and use code CHGO to sign up. New customers can take home $200 in bonus bets instantly just for betting $5. That code, again, is CHGO. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort. 21 plus age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. See DraftKings DKNG.co/football for eligibility, terms, and responsible gaming resources. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. Eligibility and deposit restrictions apply. Again, download that DraftKings app and use code CHGO. All right, Brendan. So here is where we are as Brendan and I finish recording this podcast. It is 5:15 on Sunday, September 10th. So looking at the refreshed standings across Major League Baseball, the Milwaukee Brewers lead the NL Central 79-63. They are 3 games ahead of the Cubs, who are 77-67. But remember, the Brewers 4 ahead in that loss column. So a number to keep in mind. In the wild card race, the Phillies are 2 games ahead of the Cubs, just 1 ahead in the win column, but 3 in the loss column. The Phillies are 78-64. They have Atlanta on the docket next, so potential the Cubs can make up some ground there. And the Cubs have a 2-game cushion on the Arizona Diamondbacks, who are 75-69. Half a game behind them, the Miami Marlins. 1.5 behind Arizona is the Cincinnati Reds. And realistically, the last team in this race is the San Francisco Giants, who are 4 games behind the Chicago Cubs. That is where we're at, Brendan. So a nice little cushion, but it's close. You're going to have to keep winning games. Obviously, the Cubs' schedule here for this week, they are headed out west to play the Colorado Rockies. They have 3 with Colorado starting on Monday, September 11th. 2 7:40 starts in a row here in Chicago, and then a 2:10 finale on Wednesday, an off day on Thursday, and then we see these same Diamondbacks. 3 night games, Brendan. It is not what you and I wanted to hear. We have gone all season without doing Sunday Night Baseball.
And now it's our time.
And we've got Sunday Night Baseball. Really, like, I don't love doing it late, but it really doesn't matter. Honestly, the real reason I don't like it is because those broadcasts are just awful.
Yeah, I know.
So it is what it is. But 3 with the Rockies, 3 with the Diamondbacks. Obviously, key here, have a good series in Colorado. Colorado stinks. And then, you're going to have a tough series against Arizona, as we just saw. They're a good team. They're going to play you competitively. But I think, sort of same vibe for me, Brendan. You went 4-3 here at home. I would have liked better. But, 4-2 out west would be great. I would probably take 3-3, honestly. But if you're looking to get back into that division, of course, you have 3 with Milwaukee to finish the season. But, you're going to want to clean up in Colorado if you are really hoping to take back that division. But how are you looking at this week, Brendan?
With football starting, it always signals baseball's almost over, like we only have 18 games left. I'm going to try my best to enjoy the games. I probably won't because I'll be stressed out about it, but I'm going to try my best to enjoy this 2023 team. Try my best to enjoy Dansby Swanson, Nico Horner, Cody Bellinger playing phenomenal defense and see what happens. At this point, I'm not going to complain about lineup decisions or certain guys playing or not playing. At this point, it is what it is. This is the team. It's no longer April, no longer May. These are the guys that will be going out there, and I'm hoping they just come out and have a successful West Coast trip. It always scares me going out west, just the time zone change. It's a hassle going out to the West Coast travel-wise. Come back, split, still be in the hunt, still have that lead in the wild card, be within arm's distance in the last week of the division. And I got to say, in the back of my mind, I thought about this quite a lot. We have the last regular season podcast, you and I, against the Milwaukee Brewers on that Sunday. And that game, maybe for the division, imagine that show. So that's where I'm at. Get to a point where you're still within arm's distance of the division, however you can. Just get me to that last week.
Yeah, hey, sounds good to me. I only have one simple request. I want them to play well, but I think you're right, right? We are watching they are in the playoffs right now. They are playing well. And I think at the beginning of the year, we all would have taken that. So I am going to try and enjoy it as well. I have one simple request for this team. When Justin Steele pitches this week,
score
some runs for Justin Steele, please.
I would
like for him to throw a single inning this week, right, where he has a nice, cushy lead. He does not have to try and protect a 1-0 lead. He pitched a lot of innings this week where it was 0-0 or 1-0 or something like that. Please score Justin Steele some runs. That is my only request for this team. Give him a nice, cushy W. He's trying to win a Cy Young, folks. Like, listen, offense. He's trying to win a Cy Young. Like, give him a little breathing room. A nice 4-0 lead before he even takes the mound here. Right? That would be very nice.
I got this feeling about Dansby. I don't know what it is. I just got this feeling about him. His at-bats today were spectacular. 3 hits, home run, contacts up. I think we're past that adjustment point phase. He's feeling himself. I just got that feeling.
Well, and hey, hopefully the Cubs offense brings, they were feeling dinger happy here on Sunday. 3 homers in that third inning of the finale win.
The altitude.
Take that to Colorado.
Oh, man.
Hit it high, watch it fly. Y'all know how it goes.
Let's go.
Yes, so this week we will have shows for you. I will be playing the role of Cody Bellinger every day.
You're in the studio every day?
We are in a playoff race, so I think no show on Thursday, I think, with the off day. Okay. But Cody is heading out to manifest wins in person.
Well, guess who else is too? Me.
Who, you?
Yeah, I'm going to Arizona.
Nice.
So he and I, both.
You love
the traveling crew.
Brendan Miller loves Chase Field.
God.
Put that out. Print it.
Don't.
Please.
This is a happy episode, Corey.
But listen, Cody's going out west to bring home W's. Brendan is going to go to Arizona. No, Craig, I always wear pants on set. All right? Nobody's talking about my legs. I will always be wearing pants. We'll see about the beer bat, Barb. I don't know.
I've done one.
I want Luke to do it. I don't know. But everybody here at CHGO, we are going to do what we need to do. Brendan hates going to Chase Field. He's going to do it because this is a playoff team, and we need to help them get to the finish line here. Cody, flying out west to Arizona and Colorado
this is what we
because
do.
This is a playoff team, and it's what we have to do. I can't leave Luke and Ryan alone in the studio. I have got to go and help this team win games. And if I have to do a beer bat, if that's what's necessary,
then you'll do it.
I will embarrass myself on a live YouTube show and do a slow beer bat chug. I think that's what we got to do. So we will have shows for you this week. I will correct it if I'm wrong, but I believe no show on Thursday. Post game Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday when the Cubs play. Brendan and I will be back with you on Sunday after the Cubs and Diamondbacks finish on Sunday Night Baseball. So hope you guys can stay up with us next Sunday night and talk hopefully a successful trip out west for the playoff bound as we speak Chicago Cubs.
Let's go.
Thank you guys for joining us. I know the Bears are on, football's on, so appreciate you guys tuning in live later on the podcast feed, however you're listening. Appreciate your support of everything going on at CHGO and CHGO Cubs. Brendan and I will talk to you next Sunday. And as always, go Cubs.